Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerd Steve, and today I'm joined by Colby from D&D Optimization. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. D&D optimized.
Optimized, damn
It's all right.
it. um, so um, from that, it makes me think that maybe you're a bit of an optimizer.
What makes you think that?
So do you get angry emails and messages from DMs?
To be honest with you, I've been kind of surprised at how few I get. There's definitely some. When I was first starting out, I remember I had one of my very first comments was like, you're ruining the game. You make it all about the numbers. Like, and it's,
Yeah.
it's more about the role play, more about the story. But to that guy's credit, I kind of, responded. And I was like, I mean, this is just one way that I like to have fun. I definitely don't think it's the only way to play the game. I definitely think that, all ways of having fun are valuable and et cetera. We kind of had a little back and forth and kind of ended up parting ways as friends almost, I felt like, through the comments. I'll still get an occasional. I just had one last night where a guy was like, he replied to one of my videos that was like, if one of my players tried to do this in the game, like these are all the ways that I would counter him,
Yeah.
and I guess my take is a little bit like, you know, I mean, shouldn't we like if D&D is about communal storytelling, right? And having fun and all sort of playing together and enjoying this game together that we love, and everybody maybe loves something a little bit different about the game, right? You might really enjoy creating a character that feels really powerful in game. For you, that might not be as important, and you care more about having a cool, fun, unique character and telling a great story. you know Maybe somebody else has a different approach to it, but yeah, this guy was like, oh yeah, if somebody brought this character to my table, here are all the things that I would do to counter them. I would have all of my enemies have blind sight, and they would constantly be casting fog cloud in order to make you lose the advantage that you get by casting darkness and all of this kind of stuff. And I was just kind of like, so you know what like is the role of the DM to counter their players? Like, is this a tactical game that we're playing, like Warhammer or something like that, or is it just like us all getting together with friends and having fun and telling a story together? And if your way of having fun is X and your way of having fun is Y, like, can't we all make it work and be friends? I don't know. That's sort of my approach. But that was a long answer to a short question. I think really, I don't get a ton of angry retorts. I'm pretty thrilled and overwhelmed almost sometimes by just how great the D&D community is in general. I think compared to other online communities, especially, people are just pretty accepting and open-minded and I don't know, just kind of here to have fun, or at least that seems to be my audience generally, which I'm grateful for.
I find the YouTube D&D community is much better than maybe some of the other YouTube communities out there.
Oh
We
yeah,
are fortunate that way.
yeah, no
And
question.
also, the people you make angry probably just skip your videos anyway.
Yeah,
So, uh,
and what's funny? Sorry, I was a friend of mine was telling me this the other day. He's like, yeah, what's interesting is somebody might come on and make sort of this negative critical comment on one of your videos. What they don't realize is they're actually helping you, because the more comments your YouTube video gets, the better
yeah.
it is in the algorithm. So it's almost like, thanks for bumping me, regardless of the fact that you're trying to tear me down a little bit. So I don't know.
Well, it's funny because I mean, we also do like a lot of optimized builds and different builds, and it's fun to theorycraft. We also rag on a lot of things, and then we
Yeah.
play them, right? Like, we don't actually play the OP builds we make. We play the things we
Sure.
rag on.
Sure.
Like, I always bash gishes, and like people want to
Mm.
fight with me all day long.
Oh, my viewers would fight with you.
Oh yeah, yeah. I know. Well, it's always like the Blade Singer. I'm like, and if
Yeah.
you do this series of things, it becomes as good as this other thing that just
Right.
starts like that. Or like, I'm kind of like with the gishes. I'm like, well, Generally, if you can hit something with a sword or cast a spell, there's probably a better spell.
Yeah, it could be, but that that's actually interesting because that was sort of the question for me that like started me on this path of creating this channel, right?
Yeah.
I was like constantly on oh, I don't know, like online forums, whether it's Giants in the Playground or the 3D6 subreddit, things like that, that tend to be sort of cater to min-max power gamer optimizers, right? And everybody's always talking about a few certain builds in D&D that are sort of known as the best, right? Your Hexblade Warlock that has Polearm Master Feat and Great Weapon Master and cast Darkness on themselves so they can get advantage because they have Devil's Sight, or the Great Weapon Master, Polearm Master, Barbarian Fighter build, or the Crossbow Expert Sharpshooter ranged, fighter build, or the Sorlock, that's using Eldritch Blast and Quicken Spell. I mean, these sort of, I guess, at least in the optimizer community, they're sort of known to be the strongest or whatever. And I was like, I want to know if that's true, but not only is it true, like, how do they actually compare to each other, and what do the numbers look like? I've always
Yeah.
been like, for whatever reason, like I like spreadsheets. I don't know. I'm like that special kind of nerd that likes both D&D and like spreadsheets and graphing things. And so I'm like, I want to build this Hexblade Warlock that's supposedly amazing, or this Crossbow Expert Fighter that's supposedly the best, right? And then not only look at them like at level 20, this character does like 5 billion damage, but it's like, okay, well, what about at level 5 or 6 and
Yeah.
then 9 and 13 and 17? Because nobody plays a game at 20, right?
What about the levels we're actually playing the game at?
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, okay, that's against maybe like a target dummy with a 0 AC, but like, what about at a 10 armor class or a 13 armor class or a 17 armor class, right? And then how do they compare to each other and all this kind of stuff. And so I started to like, I started just on my own to like sort of crunch the numbers and like start graphing things and stuff. And I was sharing it with all of my friends that I play with, and none of them are optimizers. And they were all like, yeah, that's really interesting, dude. Like, stop bugging us about like all of your cool graphs and spreadsheets. And I'm like, surely somebody would find this interesting, right? Maybe and I looked for a podcast or a YouTube channel that well, actually I didn't look for a YouTube channel because it didn't seem like something that somebody would put on YouTube. I started looking for podcasts, couldn't find one, and I'm like, well, I guess I'll just make it myself, because to me the data was really interesting. And so at the time I was playing a Blade Singer, getting back to what started me down this road. And it seemed really powerful to me, right? I was like, this
Yeah.
character is awesome and fun and amazing and like really strong. And if I use Shadow Blade, like a 2d8 weapon or a 3d8 or a 4d8, depending on if I can upcast it, right, it feels better to me than a 2d6 greatsword, right? So if I could make it work, like, could it be as powerful as some of these other sort of known best ever for damage builds? So I would like put everything in the spreadsheet, graph it all, chart it, at this level, at this armor class, blah, blah, blah. And then did the Blade Singer, and it compared like very favorably, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, this is like, it didn't seem like anybody was talking about this, or at least nothing that I knew of or no one that I could find anyway, at least in my podcast searches, which is all I was doing. So I was like, I guess I'll start a podcast myself, and maybe I'll find an audience. And so I have a podcast, and nobody listens to it. But I decided I might as well do a video while I'm at it, right? And throw it up on YouTube. And that seems to be finding an audience, which surprises me still to this day, because it's like, why would somebody watch me talk about this if they could just listen to me talk about it while they're, mowing the lawn or something? I don't know. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful that they want to, for whatever reason. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Other different crowds, right? The
Yeah.
podcast and the YouTube space. My first like 5e character that I played was Invocation. Evocation was at
Mm.
first.
Same here.
Elder's Knight.
Oh,
And then I moved into War Wizard once the UA came out because that made more sense for the character that I was building.
now was that like your first 5e character? Do you mean?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, my
okay,
first
because I
5e
was
character.
like, did Eldritch Knight exist?
No, no,
You know,
like I
back in
think
the
it was probably a prestige class in third edition. It had to be. Um,
so so when did you start? What edition did you start playing?
First, I was at the very tail end of first.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you mean AD&D or like Dungeons and Dragons?
AD&D.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's same with me.
And then like at the same time, like or close to like my first introduction was probably the red box.
Hmm.
But I didn't actually play. Like a friend brought it over, showed it to me, and then like I made a character and played like a session, maybe two of Gamma World, and then I wouldn't touch gaming RPGs until like 5 years later, and then we started with AD&D, and I had the second printing of first edition, um, which had really really great covers, but the books all fell apart. Like the pages would just all come out.
Right. Right.
That's why like when 5e came out, and all the whatever binding that you were using was really cruddy, and it's like, oh, they're trying to give us that first edition feel. The book's falling apart.
Right. Yeah, I had a much bigger gap. I played in middle school, right? Just AD&D with my friends, and gosh, looking back, I mean, lots of fun memories, and I absolutely fell in love with the game, but I'm also 100% convinced that like my DM, it was my friend Adam, just like we didn't know anything about the rules, and he kind of wanted to keep us in the dark intentionally because I think he liked feeling powerful, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we didn't really know what we were doing. I knew that I had hit points and there was like plus to hit and I could cast spells. I did a wizard, right? Because I wanted to throw fireballs. And but it was a lot of fun. I played for 3 or 4 years and obsessed over it. But at the same time, like I didn't really know
It took a
like
long
how
time
the
before you
game
could throw
worked.
fireballs or be
Oh
considered a
yeah.
wizard.
Yeah. Well, and it was brutal too. Like again, I don't know the rules, so maybe he just made stuff up because he didn't like me that day or whatever. But like
Yeah.
in AD&D, like to cast a spell, at least for me, you had to spend a round essentially concentrating and like preparing the spell, and then on the next turn you could cast it. Again, maybe that was my
I
my
vaguely
warped version,
remember
but
some of that. I think with second edition that might have changed.
yeah, it was
Um,
it was it was rough. It was rough being a spellcaster in AD&D, no question.
yeah, and then it's like then you all that build up for your one spell, and then you had to wait till
Mhm.
tomorrow to do it again.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
And
stuck with your dagger and
yeah,
cowering in the back.
right. I had a dagger that, I mean, he homebrewed some monstrosity that was like, it was a three-bladed dagger that
Yeah.
had like it looked like a candelabra probably, right? It had like two two short blades on either end and a longer blade in the middle that was like a D6, and the two short ones were a D4. So if I could stab somebody with it, it would actually do like 2D4 plus 1D6. Um, but but if I were stabbing somebody with it, then I was probably going to die the next turn.
It was, yeah,
Um,
you were in a bad spot.
right.
Yeah.
So it was always a last ditch. I but yeah, I didn't play from my sophomore year of high school until probably 3 years ago. I've been wanting to forever and just getting my fix, with computer RPGs from Baldur's Gate to World of Warcraft. But found a group of friends at work one day. They were all in the developer side of our business, and we were at a company lunch one day, and I kind of heard him chatting down at one end of the table, right? And
Yeah.
I heard somebody say, and then I rolled a 20, and I was like, kind of slid down,
Yeah.
I'm like, sounds like you guys are talking about D&D. And they're like, yeah, we just started a campaign. I was like, awesome. What does a guy got to do to get in on this?
Mm.
And they were, fortunately for me, they let me in, and that was 3.5 years ago, and
That's
been
like
having a blast ever since.
that's been like one of my favorite things about having the channel is when we get like people get those stories is like people coming back to the hobby after like 20 years.
Right. Right.
And they're like, yeah, I wanted to play again. And I saw your channel.
Yeah. Oh,
Super cool.
and it's frankly, it's so much more fun now than I ever had when I was in middle school. Because I feel like, when you're 13, 14 years old or whatever, you're so much more self-conscious, right? Even though you're playing with your friends, at least I was a lot more, we would have a hard time getting into character, and we were always kind of giving
We
each other
didn't.
crap, and yeah, right. And you just make each other's life miserable because you're teenage boys with a lot of testosterone or whatever. And now it's like you're just more comfortable in your skin, and you might try your hand at talking in an accent that you've never tried before, right? With your new character, and really getting into character, and like there's just like no judgment, and everybody's just there to kind of have fun, and they're all sort of comfortable, and they embrace, you know, the nerd that's in all of us, and yeah, it's just, you just have a great time. And I know a lot more, and I'm able to sort of analyze and dive into the rules, which I really love, obviously, in a way that I never was able to do, I guess, as a junior high kid. So yeah,
Well,
it's
the
been
hobby's
awesome.
evolved too, like a lot
Yeah.
since first edition, and also like everybody used to game in a bubble, right? There was
Yeah.
no, you didn't know how other people played the game for the most
Right.
part. There was no internet back then.
Mm-hmm.
So it was whoever taught you how to play the game, and that's just how you kind of played it. For us, like, you know, I played as a teen for quite a few years, and then stopped, and then started up again in my early 20s, and then my my youngest brother, and then Ted is my brother-in-law, is a couple years younger than me. Were in my group, and
Oh,
both of them would then kind of like draw players in from high school and college. So that kind of changed things up a little bit for us earlier, because then you started getting like theater kids
yeah.
in, right, and then also Ted and some of his friends were LARPers, right? So that's a whole
Mm,
different crowd that you
that's
start pulling
intense.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was funny too, because like I remember when we first started that group, and we were playing at my one buddy's house, and or his apartment, and it was like me and him, and we're like very like blue collar, and these guys were all like college kids and LARPers, and like we were waiting for him to get home from work or something, and we're out in front of his apartment. And like, so they get bored, so they go into their trunks and start pulling out all their LARP gear. And they're like fighting with LARP swords and stuff. And my buddy gets home from work. He's like, if you ever pull that shit in front of my house again, I'll beat your ass.
That's awesome.
Like,
Uh,
because it's weird. Even though we're like all nerds, it also used to be very divisions within the nerddom, you know?
right, right. Yeah, there was a hierarchy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Some things were just too far.
right. You can only take it to this level, but beyond
Yeah.
that, then you're an outcast. I have a friend who, well, one of the friends that I play with, who I bring on my channel sometimes. Her name's Tori, and she had no experience in any kind of role play game, whether the video games or anything. But she was big into drama, and I knew that about her. And she loved acting. And I mean, what is D&D if not, I mean, it is role playing, and that's essentially theater, right? It's just with math. And so we wanted to bring another player into our table. And I thought, gosh, it'd be nice to have a little gender diversity. And so I just approached her. We were at lunch one day for work, and I was like, have you ever heard of Dungeons and Dragons? She's like, I mean, I've heard of it. And I'm like, well, let me tell you a little bit about it, because I think you might enjoy it. And so we spent like an hour over lunch, kind of talking about it, and me telling her about it. And by the end, she was like, I want to do this so bad. Like, when can I get into it and play? And so she's been great, and she's a lot of fun to play with. But she has family, like a sister-in-law and things, who she says give her a hard time because they think she's LARPing.
Mm.
And she's like, I'm not, I promise you. I think there is definitely a stigma still there, right? Where she's like, no, I'm just pretending to be somebody else, like in my mind, but I don't actually
Yeah.
dress up like them. and fight people with swords, even though that sounds kind of fun.
Yeah, yeah, it's weird, the things that are stigmas around. And also, I guess it depends where you're at, what part of the country or what country
Yeah,
you're in, and
yeah, for sure.
I've had gamer friends that would have different online personas because they're like from the Bible Belt,
Hmm.
and and they didn't want people from their professional world
Hmm.
knowing about their gaming life and stuff.
Well, I feel like, especially amongst, I mean, when you say Bible Belt, there's definitely, I mean, and maybe this stigma seems to have gone away for the most part, but man, back in the 80s, right? It
Yeah,
was like my parents, I was raised Christian, and my parents, they were pretty lenient. They didn't give me too hard of the time, but I remember my dad asking me a couple of times, right? Like, I've heard some things about this Dungeons and Dragons game that you're playing. Like, are you like, I'm okay with you playing it, but just don't ever pretend to summon demons in the game. That's taking it too far. So I wonder about, people playing in the Bible Belt, maybe if there's a greater stigma, but
if they're still stuck in the 80s.
yeah,
I,
probably
I
not.
I think there are. There's pockets around the
Yeah.
world.
I mean, I say that, and
Unfortunately,
I live in Utah, which is, a very conservative, predominantly Mormon place. So
you have like 50 wives.
yeah, 51 as of last week,
Yeah.
actually. No, just the one. That's plenty.
Uh, so for folks that aren't familiar with your channel and what you do over there, what is your primary do and what's kind of coming in the pipeline?
Yeah. So, I mean, I talked about it a little bit, but basically, I just try to like I love creating characters. In For D&D, it might be my favorite part of the game. Honestly, I almost hate to say that because I love to actually play the game. But it was a few months ago. Well, it was what, 8 or 9 months ago. We were doing this one shot, and my friend's like, okay, here's the one shot. This is the situation. We're going to start at level 5 or whatever. And everybody gets one green magic item, one uncommon magic item. And, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm like, okay, great. And I knew it was a one shot. And for us, our sessions last maybe 3 hours, right? I probably spent like 8 to 10 hours building the character for this one shot. And by the time I was done, right, I was like, what in the heck? Like I spent like 3 times longer creating this character than I'm actually going to like be playing it. But the thing is, like, I wasn't like upset about that, right? It wasn't like I've wasted all this time. It was like, that was like so much fun. Like I loved it. I just loved to just go all in and be like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. And like I've got 4 tabs open from like D&D Beyond, and I'm just like, all right, like I get one magic item. Let's look at every single magic item. Let's look at every single feat. And should I multi-class? And if I did, what would I do? And which subclass should I take? And how could I sort of put these things together in a way that would be like really awesome and cool and powerful? And so that's basically what my channel is. It's me sort of taking just a really deep dive on usually one character a week. Sometimes I'll do like team ups. So I'll have a concept for like, oh, I don't know, like a druid wizard team where the druid like focuses on controlling the enemies like in an area. So like throwing out a big area of effect control spell, and then the wizard throws out like big area of effect damage spells that are concentration based, so they do round over round damage, or something like that. I'll do a team up build once in a while, but most of the time it's just a single build where I'll just do a deep dive on the character and just go like level by level. And then I want to look at the numbers, like if I'm building the character for sustained damage, well, what's their damage per round at level 6, at level 9, at level 13, at level 17, and also based on enemy armor class. So at an AC of 10 versus an AC of 15, or whatever. And then just compare them to each other. Like I keep graphs and spreadsheets that kind of compare all of the builds that I've done so far to one another, and that graphs it out and says, okay, at 10 AC, this is where their DPR is at, but it kind of goes down as the enemy AC goes up, blah, blah, blah. I don't always do damage builds. That tends to be what I've primarily focused on, but I've got a couple of support builds in there that talk about kind of healing. I've got a few tank builds that actually tend to be pretty popular, that focus on, survivability, but also making sure that the build has tools to sort of try and protect their teammates and allies and things like that. So yeah, it's just a deep dive on a single character build, really, once a week.
I feel like you and Trent Monk would be great friends or bitter enemies.
that's
There's no middle ground though.
that's funny that you say that, actually, because so a lot of people, I think, well, a lot of people come onto my channel and compare us. I'm sure nobody's going onto his channel and comparing us, because he's much smarter and more experienced and popular than I am, right? I think there's definitely some similarities. I didn't know about Treant Monk when I started my channel.
Yeah,
Because
but I
again,
bet
like
you
I
learned
say,
about him really fast.
I did.
Because if you do builds or if you include the monk at any point in anything you do, you're
It's my
going to get
favorite.
comments about Trent
My
Monk.
favorite class is the monk.
Yeah.
No, I do. I'll get people that will come on once in a while and be like, "Hey, have you seen, Treant Monk's version of this build or whatever?" And I think he might have just very recently become aware of me, um, because let's see. So I created. I don't know if I created necessarily, but there was a very small stir around, well, on Twitter, where this is kind of a long story. You might not be interested in this, but maybe I'll tell it. I'll try and tell a shortened version of it.
I know. Were you involved in a Twitter war?
No, not anything like that. But so like, okay, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything came out, right? And they had the new custom lineage racial option.
Yeah.
And based on what felt to me like things that I'd heard Jeremy Crawford talk about on Dragon Talk and other things that Wizards of the Coast had been sort of writing and publishing and things like that, it really felt to me like they were, and I think this is true, right? That they're really sort of moving towards kind of decoupling race from kind of anything in the game, right? And just saying, yeah, you can put your ability scores wherever you want. You can, blah blah blah. So they had this custom lineage thing, and I read some forum posts about people making this argument. A lot of people kind of seem to be saying, it seems like maybe with this custom lineage thing, you can kind of be sort of whatever race you want, and maybe you could be like a custom half elf, that, right, you're a half orc, half elf, and so you don't, you kind of look like this weird new thing that doesn't really exist already in the game. But if you do that, couldn't you qualify for the racial feats that were introduced with Xanathars, right? Particularly in this case, elven accuracy, which says you have to be an elf. And it's like, well, okay, I'm a custom elf. Like, is that
Yeah.
valid? Seems like Wizards. There was one thing that Jeremy Crawford had said in one of the Dragon Talks in particular, I think, that kind of felt like, yeah, maybe that's okay. Like, maybe that's valid. So anyway, after Tasha's came out, some of the builds that I did would say, now look, I know that this is sort of debatable, right? But if your DM's on board with this, maybe you could go custom lineage, you get a free feat, call yourself a custom elf, maybe you're a half elf, half dwarf, whatever. And as your free feat at level 1, you take elven accuracy, right? And again, I would get a lot of commenters being like, oh, you can't do that. That's not rules as written. And I'd be like, talk with your DM about it. If you can pull it off, it's very powerful, right? For the numbers. And I kept bugging Jeremy Crawford on Twitter, but I'm just some nobody, right? And he's not responding to. And so in one of my videos a few weeks ago, I was like, at the beginning of the video, I was like, hey guys, like, help me out here. Like, it seems like there's a lot of forum threads on 3D6, on Giants in the Playground, on the D&D Beyond forums, of people like having this argument. Could you do this? Could you not do this? And obviously I would love to know too, because if you can, it's really powerful. Maybe it's not rules as intended or written. But let's tweet at Jeremy Crawford and see if we can get a response. And one of my viewers had a lot of a lot of pull, I think, in the Twitter world. He had like 250,000 Twitter followers. And so he posed the question at Jeremy Crawford, right? And Crawford responded. And he's like, no, you can't do that, basically. and at that point, for the first time ever, as far as I know, Treant Monk, it sort of created, again, a very small stir, not a big stir, but a very small stir. And people were like, oh, we got an answer and blah, blah, blah. And Treant Monk did come on to one of my videos where I made this, hey, we got an answer video, and me eating humble pie, right? It's like, hey, I was wrong, but at least we know, and that's great. And he came on actually and was like, oh, I've been wondering why, some of my viewers are like, you could go custom lineage and take elven accuracies. Like now it makes sense. And I was like,
it was all your fault. You started it.
I don't think I was the only one making this argument. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong, but me and my 5,000 subscribers, maybe to blame, but I think it was more than just me. But anyway, no, I'm sure he's a great guy. I don't know him at all. I've watched plenty of, a few of his videos, and they're fantastic. And he, like I say, he's smarter and more experienced than I am. And so, I guess maybe that's kind of where I'm headed. My videos tend to be a little more, long-winded and conversational, I guess, than his. And I maybe take my time a little bit more, sort of explaining why I do this and maybe why not do that, and maybe even going even deeper into the numbers and stuff like that. But I can definitely see, why people would compare us.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to see where Wizards is going with the races. They don't seem to know sometimes. I can't help but break stones when, like, in the descriptions they use things like the Alfolk are nimble. I'm like, are they really? Are they really nimble? What makes them nimble?
Right.
Not their stats.
Well, yeah. And if you want to, like, if your whole thing is, hey, we want you to be able to be a strong and hardy elf if you want, or a nimble and highly intelligent dwarf, like, we're creating that space for you, then why continue to sort of lock these feats, right, that are specific to a race? Well, why couldn't you say, hey, my character was raised by elves and was taught to be highly accurate? Is it something that's inherent in my, like, elven DNA? I don't know, so
it's before they got persuaded by the Twitter mob,
probably. And maybe, maybe they're like, well, gosh, we just put out Xanathars, like, whatever it was, 12 months, 18 months ago. Like, we can't just completely, like, throw that out the window with all of these, like, racial feats that we came out with in that book. And now we're, like, devaluing them or whatever. So
I kind of like that stuff. And the problem is they're trying to retroactively fix something, and they're not doing a very good job of it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at, like, Pathfinder 2e that kind of addresses it from the beginning, they do a much better job.
Yeah.
And I don't really, like, I don't see really a problem with the racial bonuses or whatever. And, like, even when someone's like, well, what if my half-orc's smart and he isn't particularly strong? I'm like, change where you put your stats. I mean, we max out at 20, right? Like, and then you're done anyway. So it's like, you just take a couple more levels to get there.
Yeah.
Or that,
I'm not particularly opposed to having sort of, I don't want to say stereotypes, but, I'm not opposed to an elf being maybe a little more dexterous than most other races or species, I guess, if you want to say that, in the game at all. But I do like having sort of the flexibility to do something different, for sure. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not a real hardliner one way or the other. And frankly,
I'm not either. I just don't like this. I just don't like the solution they came up with, I guess.
It's a little bit of a Band-Aid.
Yeah, like, I would be like, why not just get rid of stat bonuses altogether and be like, and just go like, oh, well, you start with 2 16s, or you work the point by so that you can start with just 2 16s. Give
everybody a little more, yeah.
Or 117. Yeah. Like, so I think there's other ways of doing it. but like the floating pluses is kind of weird, especially because that used to be like the benefit of certain races. Like
Sure.
that used to be, what I consider part of their kind of like kit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and one thing that I do like, frankly, about getting smacked down on my little elven accuracy custom lineage thing is, and I mentioned this in the sort of humble pie video that I released after that tweet,
yeah,
is it's like, look, the reality is there are certain feats, especially that are just a lot stronger than other feats, right, in the game. And sometimes it can feel, because of that, that if you're trying to optimize a character or just be as powerful as possible, your choices become very limited, right? Because it's like, well, if this combination is an option, doing anything else feels like a suboptimal choice. And that's fine. And some people will be like, then make the suboptimal choice. Like, it's all about your character and your story, and you don't have to be like everybody else, and it's not all about the numbers. And I get that. At the same time, for people who think like me, and part of the fun is, trying to create a powerful character. It just is. It's like putting a puzzle together, right? And it's like, I've got all these pieces. Like, how can I get them to
yeah,
fit just right? And that just feels really cool when I can find ways to create synergies that make them both fun and powerful. But again, when one option is sort of very clearly superior to other options, then it starts to feel like, well, I don't really have a choice, right? Or at least my choices feel a lot more limited. So saying, okay, no, you cannot do that. You can't go custom lineage and take the elven accuracy feat. You're not an elf. Even if you look elfish, even if you're half elf, half orc, doesn't matter. You can't do it. It has sort of reintroduced for me choice back into the character creation. It's like, okay, well, now I really got to choose. Like, how bad do I want elven accuracy? If I want it bad enough, like, I'm going to go half elf or elf
yeah.
and have to wait to get it until I'm level 4 or whatever, and not be able to start the game with it, or take custom lineage but go with a different feat. And then, maybe that's gonna make one build more powerful than another, depending on what level I'm at, depending on, when is my campaign going to end, and things like that. So anyway, I don't begrudge that ruling, and having interesting and difficult choices in the way that you build your character makes it interesting and fun. So I'm okay with it.
Do you find it's difficult to like balance family life, D&D, YouTube channel, having a job, and being Homelander?
you've been you've been reading some of my commenters.
Yeah, I'm
It's so
looking at the
funny.
chat and like there's so many Homelander or
Oh yeah,
Critlander.
Critlander. There you go. That's kind of become the thing. It's funny because I never got that right before I started this
uh,
YouTube channel. But obviously, like, the community is what it is, and we're
yeah, I
all
think
we're
it's the
all nerds
hair.
at
I think
heart.
it's the hair.
It's the hair. I don't know what it is, but no, it is difficult because there's only so much time in the day to work 40 hours a week, try and be a good dad and a good husband, run a YouTube channel, and then kill dozens of people daily with my laser eyes. You do what you can.
Do what you can. So
But
Brian Smith wants to know favorite or most underutilized chunk of D&D 5e design. Hit die, inspiration, resting.
most underutilized. Gosh, that's tough to say. Um, yeah, I don't know. Um, Maybe inspiration, at least at our table. There's
I
not
feel like
nearly
that's
enough
like every
inspiration
table,
handed
right?
out. Yeah,
You always forget to do inspiration. No one uses it out of a book.
right. Yeah, every once in a while. So I've got a few people that take turns DMing at our table, and it varies, right? Some of them are like, you get inspiration, and you get inspiration, and you get inspiration,
Yeah.
and then some of them you're like, I'm gonna try really hard to like do awesome role play this time, and maybe I'll get inspiration, and then like you just never get it. And it's like, and then sometimes I have it, and I'll go 2 or 3 sessions, like almost forgetting that it's there, right? And you don't want
Yeah.
to use it because it's like, once you use it, you never know when you're going to get it again. So I got to save it for like a really important moment.
I guess in our games we let it build up. We carry it over. We always start with it, and we never give it for any of the things you're supposed to. So,
Right, right.
it's always like funny or cool things that happen at the table. I think it's a cool mechanic that they tied to really, really like kind of obtuse things for a DM to know about every character.
Right. No, I do. I agree. I love it. I think anything really that will encourage, more better role play, and and that would incentivize your characters. Not that they should need an incentive, right? Because we
Yeah.
do it because it's fun and we want to tell a story. But sometimes it helps to have just a little push, right? Where it's like, hey, do a good job with this, and I'll reward you mechanically in game, especially for people who maybe tend to not be as prone to really get into their character otherwise. I think it's a nice little push in that
For the
direction.
introverts in your gaming
Yeah.
group.
Yeah, or the optimizers who sometimes forget that they're role playing and not playing a tactical game or something. Not that that's me, because it's not, but they're out there.
There's a lot of different things you can optimize for in the game, not just the numbers, right? It's just
Yeah,
what's important to
absolutely.
you.
In fact, I get a lot of I've had a lot of requests for people to say that people who, because when I started the channel, all of the builds were sort of I'm gonna take a look at all of the sort of best, as far as the community is concerned, strongest builds out there, and try and compare them to one another. But obviously you very quickly run out of content at that pace, and so
Yeah.
sometimes I would interject just characters that I thought were interesting, that I would want to do, that I'd want to take a look at. But I also, from day one, was asking, viewers, hey, if you've got a build that you want me to sort of take a deep dive on, let me know, give me details, and I'll do my best to try and optimize it for you in game. And I've had several requests for like, create the like most optimal role play character, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. But then sometimes
Yeah.
they'll be more specific and say, give me, like, build a character that's like the best at all of the skills, right? That just is like a
Yeah.
skill master. And so is really, and part of me just kind of goes, well, that's a lower bar. So
I think
I'm
it's
not sure
something
what else to do
between
with that.
6th and 9th level. You can get all the skills, and
Yeah.
you can get a lot of expertise.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, I have yet to do it because for me, I like to quantify things, right? I want to be able to stick it in a spreadsheet and graph it, and I'm not quite sure how to graph, an optimized skill build, because what are we trying to do? Is it like, you know, I'm gonna have to come up with some sort of like, well, against a DC of X, whatever the skill is that you're trying to accomplish, and here's your average skills, and so on average against this difficulty check, here's your success rate or something
Well,
like
it's
that,
not that
right?
hard because if you use 30, which is considered impossible,
Mm-hmm.
an impossible task, which I mean, we've definitely done builds where we've gone 2.5 times above
Yeah,
that number. So
yeah,
I think Wizards of the Coast kind of botched the math on that one a little bit.
right.
Um,
Surely no one will ever be able to get above a 30.
yeah, it's like easily 60s, and even 80s are possible with the right combinations and
Mhm.
enough levels. Corey wants to know if you could have one magic item in real life, what would you pick?
One magic item in real life. I mean, it's got to be like a like a magic broom, or something that gives me flight, right? Is there a ring of flying?
There's you can get a flying carpet. There's
Flying carpet.
broom.
Yeah, flying carpet would be more comfortable than a broom, I think. I'd go
Yeah,
carpet,
I wonder if you.
or like a Pegasus. That's not a magic item, I guess. But
Yeah, well,
anyway,
you could get a figure in Wondrous Power that lets you fly
there you go.
for a yeah. The nightmare one's like a Pegasus. I mean, it also may drop you in hell, but
That
it's
might
that.
be, some people probably think that's boring, I guess, but no, I've always wanted to be able to fly. That would always be my first pick of for a superpower.
Real life is hard because like you're definitely gonna pick things that you wouldn't necessarily pick for a game. Like in a
Right.
game, I'm pretty boring. Like if you give me a choice of magic items, I'm gonna be like ring of protection or cloak of
Oh yeah.
protection.
I always go for the numbers every time.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just like +1 to all my saves and a better armor class.
Luckstone. Yeah,
Yeah.
or yeah, like if I'm playing a monk, it's the bracers of defense. If or like oh, what's the cloak of
Cloak of Elvenkind.
no, I'm thinking where your attackers have disadvantage.
Oh, displacement.
Displacement. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's super
Oh, Cloak of the
powerful.
Bat would give you a flight too.
There you go.
Cool
And
stuff going
then you
on.
wouldn't have to sit on something that may or may not be giving you a wedgie
Yeah.
while you're
But
doing it.
I feel like the flying carpet. Then you can like
You could
then
lay
you
down.
could Uber.
There you go. Kind of poke your head over the side as you're
Yeah.
floating over the world.
I mean, and then there's just things like an alchemy jug, right, where you can just produce stuff.
Hmm. I was gonna say invisibility, ring of invisibility, but then I thought that's creepy. Like,
Yeah,
where do you need to
that's the
go where you're
creeper
going to be
magic item.
invisible?
Helmet teleportation, never sit in traffic again.
There you go.
I mean, there's a lot of good ones. It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how often are you gaming?
Right now it's once a week. Once a week, Thursday nights we play. I'm in the middle of three different campaigns. Uh, we kind of do well. One of them's on hold until everybody's vaccinated and
Mm,
and we can play in person again because we decided it's just not as fun. And we're in the middle of Strahd, Curse of Strahd, and we got maybe 3/4 of the way through. COVID hit. We did a couple of sessions online, and we were just like, I feel like we're getting close to the climax, and like I don't want to do this over Zoom or Discord or whatever. So let's wait on that. And so we kind of have a couple other games going. One's a homebrew that we actually just finished last Thursday. We wrapped it up. And the other is Storm King's Thunder. Um, but we just play Thursday nights. I've had a lot of people ask us to like, put our games up on YouTube or
yeah.
Twitch or whatever, and we're planning on it. We kind of want to like get all of our other campaigns wrapped up, like be able to play in person again. And so Corey, our usual DM, he's got the most experience of all of the DMs. He's been creating this totally new like homebrew whole world and campaign for us, and we're all getting vaccinated. Some of us have just gotten our second round. So we hope to be doing that. We're going to wrap up Strahd, wrap up Storm King's Thunder, everybody get vaccinated, and then start playing in person again, and recording those and putting them up probably in about 6 weeks or so, 6-7 weeks.
Yeah, all of our games have always been since we've been doing Nerdarchy anyway, a mix of online and offline. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, like the core that became Nerdarchy was like our kind of like people from our Saturday night, right? And that's what we do. We played one day a week, Saturday nights for like 20 years,
Yeah.
I guess.
Nice.
And I mean, the only real difference is like as we got older, the sessions got shorter, right?
Right. Right.
When in my 20s when we like started the group, we would get together like 3-4 in the afternoon. People start showing up,
Mm,
and there was many times people were leaving as the sun was coming up.
that's living the dream right there.
Yeah,
We're lucky if we're lucky if our sessions go 3 hours right now, because most of us have kids, and so we kind of can't really play until the kids are in bed, or else
yeah,
our partners and spouses get upset with us. And then those who don't have kids have jobs that they have to wake up early for, and so like we can't start too early, we can't play too late. But yeah, hopefully, as my kids are getting a little bit older, my wife's becoming a little more lenient with me, and maybe one day we'll be able to get to twice a week, or at least start at 8:30 or 8 instead of 9 o'clock, and let us play
Well,
for
I mean, if
4 hours instead
becomes
of
your
three.
job, then I guess you'll kind of have to.
That's the dream, and ideally, get to a point where not only can it pay my bills, but maybe some of my friends too, and then we just play at work, right?
Yeah, what you're gonna really find out is you're gonna do all this stuff that doesn't involve the game. There's gonna be lots of meetings.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah,
it's
that's what I
already
learned
it's
anyway.
it's already starting to get there a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, I have a fraction of the subscribers that you guys do, but I try to like read all the comments
Uh,
and reply to a lot of them. And now my email is, I don't even, I feel bad. People email me. I used to like publish my email in my early videos because, I had like 5 followers and like, yeah, like,
yeah.
if you want to talk to me, let's talk.
After a while, you're like, I didn't think this through very well.
Oh no, it was like the worst thing ever. Like, I think I was 10 videos in and I was like, okay, like I'm not going to mention my email anymore, but it's still out there. And so I
Yeah.
still get, people who may discover me with a recent video, but then they go back and watch my earlier ones. And then they are like, oh, and they're emailing me. And I feel bad. It's like, I check it like once a week, if that. And I have like all of these emails and I'm like, oh, sorry, it's taking me so long to respond. And some of them I don't even get to. And I'm
I
like, yeah,
think
that was a mistake.
I think up to like 50,000, I responded to every comment,
Hmm.
and then like it got so much. Now it's like I periodically will check in and
Yeah.
respond. It gets
Yeah.
overwhelming, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. You're just like, I can't respond to all of you. It's
Right.
too
It's
much.
it's too much.
It's
It
overwhelming.
already feels that way a little bit for me right now,
Yeah.
and I feel bad. But I've been getting some help. One of my friends, I call him Mr. Rogers. He plays at the table with us, and I pull him in along with a couple other buddies to do our weekly sliding into my DMs episode, which is just, it's kind of our version of this almost, where
Yeah.
we'll pick a topic and just kind of talk about it mostly from like a DM perspective and make rulings on, questionable rules and things like that. And it's great. But anyway, he's been helping me out with some of the video editing, which has been really nice, and even a little bit of like social media management. But yeah, I can already sort of see, if I keep growing, like it's going to get more and more difficult to manage, no question.
There's all these things in there. Each of them are their own individual job. Like there they
Right.
could be, right? Just managing Facebook could be a job, or
Yeah.
Twitter could be a job.
Yeah. Fortunately, I have very few social media followers, so
Yeah.
maybe I'll be lucky, and it will stay that way. I don't know.
There's definitely some creators that don't bother with much social media, and they just stay on YouTube and manage to make that work for them.
Right, right.
How often are you putting up videos?
So right now it's at least twice a week. I do one like full episode,
Mhm.
character build, and those are sort of, I guess, my bread and butter. They get a lot more views. Anywhere from, right now it seems like what, 5 to 30,000 views a video on those ones. And then then we do the sliding into my DMs videos, and those draw a smaller crowd. There may be 1,500 to 2,500 views, and I'll do those. So I'll do the builds on Tuesday. Usually I'll release them on Tuesday, and then do the DMs episode on either Thursday or Friday. But every once in a while, I'll have like a short in there where I'll just kind of take like a math problem and be like, okay, let's talk about two-weapon fighting and like numerically why it's not as good as like using a two-handed weapon, and
Yeah.
just do like what for me is a short video, which is like 20 to 30 minutes. And just like go deep into just the numbers and the math on something. Or like when we hit 5,000 subscribers, we did like a little hey, 5,000 subscribers, like PvP, player versus player video, where like me and 3 of my friends kind of each picked one of my previous builds that I had done in an episode and like fought each other using them. And that was fun. So yeah, every once in a while I'll put up, something extra, but for the most part, it's 2 a week right now. I hope to actually add more content though. I'm in the middle right now of creating what I'm calling D&D University, which is kind of like teaching the ropes to people who don't know a lot about the game. So ideally, maybe they could finish watching my D&D University videos and then be able to watch one of my character builds, and it would actually make sense to them. I'm hoping to get those out sometime in the next month. And then we're going to start recording our games. Oh, did my camera freeze?
A little bit.
Give me 1 sec. I think I can get it working again. Hold on.
You're gonna smack it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm using my phone as a camera, and every once in a while it'll crap out on me. But
Okay. Actually, I couldn't tell. It was coming through fairly well.
yeah, let's
And
see.
we still have audio, which is
Fortunately, we still have audio. There we go. Sorry about that.
no worries, man. When we
but-
started our channel, we started record like all of our videos were on phone. We could record it with phones and start a mic.
Well, I used to just use my laptop's built-in camera, and then realized, like, nowadays your phone camera, if you get software for it, like
It's better.
it's pretty decent, right? But I was just gonna say, we'll be recording our weekly games and putting those up as well here sometime in the next 6 weeks. So it might get to the point where I'm doing three a week, which feels like a lot, and maybe 4 once in a while. So I don't know.
It is a lot. It is a lot.
Yeah.
We've been all over the place. Like when we first started, we just put them out whenever. We probably did like 2 to 3 videos a week anyway. And then we got to the point where we're like, well, we can't, maybe our videos aren't as good as other people's, but we can just do more of them. And we were doing like, we were doing 3 videos a day.
Wow.
We did also used to do a lot of micro content too. Like,
okay.
We would like take like one tiny section of like, it was easy, early on when, 5e was new.
Yeah.
And I would just like grab like little sections. We might just talk about disease from the DMG.
Sure.
So we'd do 2 videos a day, and then we we're doing a live chat. So like the number of videos and content we were putting up was insane.
Yeah.
But then we decided to like try and focus more on the production quality and stuff like that, and kind of backed off. Now I see like Nerd Immersion, and I was like, oh, that was kind of like the old Nerdarchy model where he's like he puts up tons of videos,
just tons of content.
Yeah.
What these days? How long would you say like one of your usual videos takes you from like, I guess start to finish, right? Where you kind of come up with the concept of the video, record it, post editing, get it up there. Like how many hours would you say of work is involved there?
Yeah, so we've got like this like really kind of generic template we use for our worksheets, where we do a worksheet for each video. Me and Ted will meet up on Tuesdays and spend a couple hours hammering those out, just kind of like bullet points of what we want to cover, and then we'll film 3-4 videos in 2.5 hours. And then, then it goes off to the editors, which nice. That's like really dropped down time. I guess also we've been doing it a while, so like we've gotten a lot faster with like recording and stuff.
Right.
But I mean, I remember in the early days, like, we would film like twice a week, and occasionally we couldn't. So we were usually like filming like 12 videos at a time. Or within a week, and then sometimes maybe we'd have to do them all on the same day.
That's crazy.
And it was terrible. It just made, by the end of that day, you just wanted to take a shotgun and put it in your mouth and pull the trigger with your big toe.
Yeah, I'm probably like, I'm right now. I mean, my full episode build episodes probably take me 15 hours of work on average for me, just because like I try to be as thorough as I possibly can and just really go super deep. And I mean, they're an hour long too, right? So like it takes me a while to record it, and then I've got my friend helps me edit, unfortunately, but and I got to crunch the numbers and put it in the graph, and spreadsheet it, and all of that kind of stuff. And I write very extensive show notes for each episode, but at the same time, like, it doesn't feel like work to me still. That may change one day, I suppose, but right now it's just fun. Like, I just love it. And so, like, I love to just, be like, okay, here's the concept that, like, my viewer has given me, right? Because most of the stuff that I'm doing these days is just coming from people's requests and recommendations. And so I'm like, gosh, I never thought about trying to build a character who, like, can only use thrown weapons.
Mhm.
Like, how could I take that and make it, like, as powerful as possible? And then I'll just, again, like, go into
That's
like every feat, every sub race,
yeah.
or not sub race, subclass, and be like, okay, what could I do? And, like, if I took a battle master that had the quick toss, well, what weapon would I use? What if I did a net? And, like, the darts? Well, the problem with the darts is, or the problem with most thrown weapons is they're melee weapons. And I want to be able to do sharpshooter, but, like, it has to be a ranged weapon specifically. And there's not that many ranged weapons. So,
There's
like,
two.
yeah, you know what I mean? So that are thrown. Yeah. So it's just that, right? And I'm just like,
Yeah, I was so happy when Tasha's Cauldron of Everything came out with the thrown weapon
thrown
fighting,
weapon fighting
because it
style.
wasn't viable before that, because
No.
the problem was you could never draw enough weapons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or you
Now
had
you
to walk
can.
around with them in your hands.
Yeah. Now you can, and you take thrown weapon fighting style, and you take the archery fighting style as well, and you go battle master so that you can
I'm
get quick
literally playing that
toss.
character right now.
Nice. Are you
Uh,
using nets?
no, I use darts.
Oh, see, here's what you do. Well, whatever, you do what you want, but but you quick toss. You battle master. You quick toss the net,
Uh,
and as long as it hits, now you have advantage, right? For
yeah.
one glorious round, and until they, because
Well, or
they're gonna
until they
they're
get
gonna
out of it,
break.
right?
Well, right, but it's like a DC 10, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah. You'd
strength
be
check for them to
surprised,
get out.
right? Like I've played druids where I'd go giant spider, and
Mm-hmm.
like the DM just had a series of bad rolls, and they were stuck in
Love
that
that
really weak net.
web.
Like I
Yeah,
was like, all right, you know what? Tying someone up for one round and letting the rest of the party go out of, and taking away their action to get out of it is like awesome by itself.
right, right,
But
right.
then
Oh
when
yeah,
they're
the
like,
controls perfect.
yeah, but when they're stuck for a couple rounds, yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah, so they're entangled in your net. You have advantage. You take Elven accuracy, so now you have, you get to roll three
Yeah.
d20s, and you just dart, 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 dart. You blow action surge. You're hitting them with your sharpshooter every time, and you blow stuff up for one glorious round. It's a great Nova. It's a great Nova build, anyway.
So that character's a chef. He just throws
Nice.
my darts are just cooking utensils. Right. Now I need I need the magic hairnet.
I love that. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, hairnet. You just whoosh, and toss
Yeah.
it. There you
Yeah.
go. That's great.
So many fun things since that book came out. But
Yeah.
we are just past the hour mark. Final thoughts before we head on out?
Final thoughts. I guess I would just say, I hope that that people watching are, and everybody who plays D&D really would be open to letting people at their table, have fun in the way that is fun to them. And for some people, that's just
Crunching
building
numbers on
funny,
spreadsheets.
crazy characters who throw hairnets and cooking utensils. And for some people, it's, trying to find a way to make their character super, like, cool and powerful in game. And I don't know why, like, those two different play styles can't exist at the same table. I feel like we make it work at ours, and everybody has a lot of fun. So there's no right or wrong way to play
Yeah.
D&D, and just like I would never, try and tell somebody else, oh, you're doing it wrong because you didn't take the optimal choice. I would hope that nobody would tell me that I'm doing it wrong because they think I'm making it all about the numbers, and
Every optimal character has a weakness anyway.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Though hopefully you're not playing with a DM who is just looking for ways to counter your really cool, fun character build that you created.
As always, the links are in the description. We had a friend that dubbed himself the immersive power gamer. So yeah, they can exist together.
Absolutely.
So thanks for coming
Absolutely.
on, Colby. Really appreciate it. Thanks for
Hey,
everyone
thanks,
for
Dave.
hanging out with us. And if you're interested, our video for today just went live over on the main channel. So until next time, stay nerdy.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Take care.